And even President Obama sounded off, warning everyone to take cover.
Get the hell off the beach in Asbury Park and get out.
We are today issuing a mandatory, I repeat the word mandatory, evacuation order.
I cannot stress this highly enough. If you are in the projected path of this hurricane, you have to take precautions now.
Are early warnings the best way to go, even if we are not talking about the storm of the century, or was it too much hype? Michael Brown is the VP of Disaster Recovery Practice at Cold Creek Solutions and, of course, the former director of FEMA. Mr. Brown, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And no one can forget Katrina and the tragic circumstances surrounding Katrina. No one can forget the images of those evacuees waiting on rooftops, et cetera. So the question, I guess, today is what we're seeing these days, in the past couple of days specifically, in terms of the early warnings, the shutdown of the subway system, et cetera, is that a response to what happened during Katrina? Or have officials learned, essentially, from your mistakes?
Yeah, I think they have learned. Look, you can't fault Governor Christie, you can't fault Mayor Bloomberg, any of them, for doing what they did. You might argue on the edges, on some of the margins, you might debate some of the issues, but they set the right tone. And that is, until people understand that they're responsible for their own safety, they have to order these evacuations. They have to make certain that people understand that these storms are dangerous. Even if they do fizzle out at the last minute, people need to be responsible. I think they did the right thing.
There's going to be a lot of criticism, Mike, of Mayor Bloomberg, of Governor Cuomo here. Al Roker, the weatherman, of course, for the Today Show, tweeted tonight, "Since when is covering a storm that kills 16 people and counting," and that number is higher, by the way, right, causes massive flooding and millions in damage, hype? Were the media and government officials, did they overplay their hand going into this?
I'm not sure they overplayed their hand going into it. I think there may have been a little overplaying of the hand as the storm began to unfold. I had to chuckle this morning. I saw on one of the news shows somebody trying to find damage, and they pointed out that there were 2 planks of wood missing in a pier. You know, it's like, okay, guys, you know, you're getting too desperate here. But I think prior to a storm, it's no different than a tornado warning, a flood warning, a hurricane warning. People need to understand that these things have a mind of their own. You can't anticipate what they're going to do. I think it's as the storm evolves that the hype might get out of control.
I think, too, you know, Mike, it's such a large storm. Right. It is so scattered that right, there is no one story. There's no narrative through this thing. There are towns in North Carolina that truly did dodge a missile, and there are towns in Vermont that are getting flooded even as we speak. That's
exactly right. But we tend to focus on the National Hurricane Center. We tend to focus on that cone of probability, and we don't focus on the fact that, you know, floods just caused by, you know, downpours, not hurricanes, can be just as dangerous as anything else. That's why I think the hype was more in the aftermath, not so much in the run-up to the storm.
So in the aftermath, Mike, what would you advise officials to say? I mean, when you hear Governor Christie say, get the hell off the beach in Asbury Park, how do you rein that back in?
Well, you don't rein it back in, but I think at the time that Governor Christie said what he said, that is exactly, look, I would have screamed from the rooftops if I could have gotten, you know, Mayor Nagin or Governor Blanco to have said that prior to Katrina. So at the time, that's the thing to say. What people have to learn for themselves is that they need to heed the warnings, and sometimes the warnings may fizzle out, sometimes they may not. But I'd rather err on the side of caution than say, oh, you know, don't worry about it, and then you get caught on. Then you're caught on a rooftop. Right.
You are sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
That's right.
Agree. One last question on the science of these forecasts. The track was almost exactly right, but the wind speed they really got wrong. Is that more difficult to perfect in the years and decades ahead?
Well, it's not only more difficult to perfect, but I think the difficulty is conveying to the public what that means. My gut told me that once that eye wall started to collapse, the wind speed started to die down, I thought this is going to turn into a tropical storm. But remember, Tropical Storm Allison that hit Houston in 2003 or 4, I think, was one of the most expensive disasters FEMA ever had. It's the floods.
All right, Michael, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Michael Brown, the former director of FEMA.
Ports in a storm, a status check on the East Coast centers of maritime commerce when we come back.